The Hughes H-4 Hercules, HK-1, seaplane designed and built by Howard Hughes, mostly of wood, is 66.65 meters long, has a wingspan of 97.54 meters, is 24.18 meters high, the fuselage alone is 9.1 meters, weighs 136 tons, has a takeoff weight of 180 times, is equipped with 8 engines, 3,000 horsepower each, is the largest aircraft in the world at that time, nicknamed Spruce Goose, made its first and last flight, only 2 kilometers in the sky of Long Beach, California. The aircraft was designed in 1942, but it was not until November 2, 1947 that the Hughes H-4 Hercules, HK-1, seaplane was completed and tested by Howard Hughes himself. This was the first, and last, test flight to lift off the water and fly 2 kilometers. After that, the aircraft was stored in a giant hangar in Long Beach, California. The aircraft is now housed in the National Air and Space Museum in the United States. The aircraft was brought to the surface to prepare for takeoff. The aircraft was built of wood due to wartime aluminum restrictions. It was nicknamed the Spruce Goose by critics. The Hughes H-4 Hercules was the largest flying boat ever built. Its wingspan and height were the largest of any aircraft in history. It remains in good condition at the Evergreen Air and Space Museum in McMinnville, Oregon, USA. History. In 1942, the United States War Department faced the need to transport war supplies and personnel to Britain. Allied shipping across the Atlantic was severely damaged by German U-boats. The need was for an aircraft that could cross the Atlantic carrying a large load of supplies, war materiel, or soldiers. Given the constraints of war, the design could not be constructed of metal. The aircraft was the brainchild of Henry J. Kaiser, who ran the Liberty Ships program. He collaborated with aircraft designer Howard Hughes to build the largest aircraft ever built at the time. When completed, it could carry 750 fully equipped troops or an M4 Sherman tank. The initial design, the HK-1, reflected the collaboration between Hughes and Kaiser. 7 different aircraft configurations were considered, including single fuselage and twin fuselage aircraft with 4, 6, or 8 engines on the wings. The final design chosen was a massive one that had never been built or even thought of. While Kaiser conceived the concept of a flying cargo ship, he had no knowledge of aviation and deferred to Hughes and his designer, Glenn Audekirk. Development of the aircraft took so long that Kaiser became frustrated. He blamed the delays partly on limitations imposed on strategic materials such as aluminum. But he also blamed Hughes's insistence on perfection. Although the first HK-1 was built only 16 months after receiving the development contract, Kaiser withdrew from the project. Hughes H-4 Hercules vs. C-47 Dakota. Hughes continued the program alone with the H-4 Hercules, originally called HFB-1 for Hughes Flying Boat, first design. He signed a new government contract but limited the production to 1 prototype. Work proceeded slowly, with the H-4 not being completed until after the war. In 1947, Howard Hughes was called before the U.S. Senate War Investigations Committee to testify about the use of government funds to build aircraft. In one of several Senate hearings on August 6, 1947, Hughes said, "The Hercules was a monumental undertaking. It was the largest aircraft ever built. It was 5 stories tall with a wingspan longer than a football field. It was bigger than a city block. I sweated my heart out in that plane. I put my reputation into it and I said it many times. If it fails, I will probably leave this country and never come back. And I said it would." 1945 Hughes H-4 Hercules under construction. 1947 Hughes H-4 Hercules under construction. 1947 Hughes H-4 Hercules being shipped to the test range. While the Senate hearings were on hiatus, Hughes returned to California to conduct operational tests of the H-4. On November 2, 1947, a series of operational tests began with Hughes at the controls. His crew consisted of Dave Grant as co-pilot, a crew of 2 flight engineers, 16 mechanics, and other flight personnel. In addition, the H-4 carried 7 guests from the news agencies plus 7 industry representatives, for a total of 32 people on board. After 2 uneventful first test runs, 4 press correspondents left the aircraft to write stories, but the rest of the press remained for the final test of the day. After gaining a good run and speed over the channel opposite Cabrillo Beach near Long Beach, the Hercules lifted itself off the water. Hovering about 70 feet (21 meters) above the water at 135 miles per hour, 217 km per hour or 117 knots, and flying for a distance of 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers. At this altitude, the aircraft still experienced ground effect. Hughes proved to his critics that the aircraft could take off and the hearings were over, but the aircraft never flew again. It is still unclear whether the aircraft was ever actually safe to fly. The aircraft was maintained in flight-ready condition until Hughes's death in 1976. Although the project never progressed beyond the prototype seaplane, the H-4 Hercules foreshadowed the emergence of large transport aircraft in the late 20th century, such as the Lockheed C-5 Galaxy, Antonov An-124 and An-225. The Hercules demonstrated that the principles of aerodynamics and the physics of flight were not limited by the size of the aircraft.